Shalom in Yeshua's name. I am Dr. Jenkins Sahayam. I welcome you to my Bible teaching series. This topic is entitled The Messiah. Since this topic requires a vast understanding of the scripture to join the various puzzle in the right place, I have split this topic into various parts so as to have a comprehensive understanding of this topic. As my teaching are sequential, if this is the first topic of mine you are listening to, I highly recommend you to listen to my earlier teaching, namely the name of God and the nature of God, before you listen to this teaching. Shalom in Yeshua's name. This is Dr. Jenkins Sahayam. You are now watching part 2 of the Messiah series entitled The Two Seedlines. Before getting into this topic, let's get a quick recap of what we have seen so far. We saw God created man in his own image. God gave man dominion over all things. Death is never man's destiny as long as he is obedient to God's warning of not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But Satan tricked Adam and Eve to eat out of the forbidden tree. Thus, the dominion of man is forfeited to Satan. But God clothed the nakedness through the garments of skin, which indicated blood sacrifice. From then on, we saw that God accepted only blood form of sacrifice. God promised that through the offspring of the woman, which is obviously a human being, the dominion will be restored back to man in the future. And the mark of God point to the grace and mercy of God through a sacrifice that is provided to the righteous and the wicked alike. Every one of us are quite familiar with the global flood during Noah's time, by which God destroyed the whole world, barring Noah and his family, along with a specific set of living creatures, which were protected in an ark that was built by Noah at the command of God. Ever wondered what was the reason that prompted God to react this severely? Let's get into the story now. Genesis 6. Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And Yahweh was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds on the air. For I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. So here we find two kinds of people, namely the sons of God and daughters of men, whose offspring were giants, which prompted God to destroy man. The word giant here is translated from the Hebrew word Nephilim, which also mean fallen ones. Now it is obvious to us who the daughters of men could be. They are, of course, women of human origin. But to find out who the sons of God are, let's get into the scripture to find out their identity. So, who are these giants and the sons of God? In Job chapter 1 and verse 6, we find, Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also was among them. And in also Job chapter 2, we read it again. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them to present himself before Yahweh. In Job 38th chapter, we find God's reply to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So from these verses, we can get an idea as to who these sons of God are. These sons of God are direct creations of God who are angelic beings, Satan being one of them. So the abominable thing that prompted God to destroy the entire world is because these rebellious angelic beings took human form and mated with human women to produce this giant hybrid race, which goes against God's plan and promise of restoring man's dominion through a human being. So what then is the nature and purpose of these angels? Well, in Psalm 104 and Hebrews 1, we read that the angels are ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation. So the scripture confirms that the sons of God in Genesis 6 are in fact angels, and the Nephilim giants are human angel hybrids as a result of intercourse between angels and human women. So now the question remains, can a spirit angel take a physical human form? In Genesis 18, we see, Then Yahweh appeared to him, that is Abraham, by the terebinth trees of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he, Abraham, lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground. So here we see Yahweh appeared to Abraham as a man along with 2 other men. As the chapter progresses, we find that Yahweh remains with Abraham, revealing to him what he is going to do with Sodom. But the other 2 angels set out towards Sodom. Yet here, Yahweh and the other 2 angels together are referred as 3 men. which obviously means these three looked like men. And in the next chapter we read, "Now the two other angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot, who is Abraham's nephew, saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, 'Hear now, my lords, please turn to your servant's house and spend the night, and wash your feet, then you may rise early and go on your way.'" So here we find the two other angels who appeared as men came to Sodom to warn Lot, who is Abraham's nephew, about the calamity that is to happen to Sodom, and asked him to leave the city soon without turning back. In Hebrews 13:2 we read, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." This obviously indicates that the angels can, at certain circumstances, in fact take human form. Now in Genesis 19, we can once again judge the reason why God chose to destroy the city of Sodom. Now before the two angels lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house, that is Lot's house, and they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally." So this picturizes the homosexual mentality of the citizens of Sodom, in spite of Lot's offering of his own daughters to them for sexual pleasure. And this brought God's righteous judgment upon the inhabitants of Sodom. We see this in Jude 1 as well. "But I want to remind you, though you once knew this, that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe, and the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode," which is during the time of Noah, "he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire." So Jude connects correctly about the sexual immorality involving angels and human beings in both the Noah episode and the episode of Sodom and Gomorrah. In 2 Peter 2nd chapter also we read, "For if God if not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly, if by burning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what he is going to happen to the ungodly." So now we can understand clearly why God brought judgment upon the earth during the time of Noah and upon Sodom. Because all that God was seeking from man is a godly offspring. But what resulted as a result of the rebellious union is that we had the Nephilim, which is the origin of genetic evil. But Genesis 6 says that the Nephilim were found even after the flood. So where in the scripture do we find the Nephilim after the flood? In Numbers 13, we read that the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land, which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants. The descendants of Enoch came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. So here we read that after witnessing the many miracles of God with their own eyes, the Israelites during the Exodus reached the border of the promised land of Canaan, which Yahweh had promised them. Now they selected one from each of the 12 tribes to spy the land before conquering it. But these spies brought a bad report of sighting the giants, who were the descendants of a man called Enoch, who is one of the Nephilim. Further, in Deuteronomy 3, we read that Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. His bed was almost 14 to 15 feet in length. Again, in Deuteronomy 2, we read that when Yahweh said to me, "Do not harass Moab, nor contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land as possession, because I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession." The Emim had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. They were also regarded as giants like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim. The Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them and dwelt in their place, just as Israel did to the land of their possession which Yahweh gave them. So here we read that along with the Anakim, the Emim and the Horites were also part of the Nephilim. So it was when all the men of war had finally perished from among the people that Yahweh spoke to me, saying, "This day you are to cross over at Ar, the boundary of Moab, and when you come near the people of Ammon, do not harass them or meddle with them. For I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the descendants of Lot as a possession." That was also regarded as a land of the giants. The giants formerly dwelt there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzumim. A people a great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. But Yahweh destroyed them before them, and they dispossessed them and dwelt in their place, just as he had done for the descendants of Esau, who dwelt in Seir. When he destroyed the Horites from before them, they dispossessed them and dwelt in their place even to this day. And the Avim, who dwelt in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came from the Caphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their place. So we read Anakim, Emim, Horites, Zamzumim, and Avim are a group of Nephilim who were living after the flood. And in 1 Samuel 17:4, we read the most famous personality among the Nephilim, whose name is Goliath, whose height is around 10 feet. Also in 2 Samuel 21, we read that when the Philistines were at war again with Israel, David and his servants with him went down and fought against the Philistines. And David grew faint. Then Ishbi-Benob, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, "You shall go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel." Now it happened afterward that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Shibachai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was one of the sons of the giant. Again there was a war at Gob with the Philistines. where Elhanan, the son of Jari-Oregim the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Yet again there was a war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number, and he was also born to the giant. So when he defiled Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were born to the giants in Gath and fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So these are some of the instances where the scripture differentiates normal human being and the Nephilim. Also, we read in Daniel chapter 8:16 and Daniel chapter 9:21 that the angel Gabriel appeared as a human being to Daniel. In Daniel 2, we read about an important vision by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, which prophet Daniel revealed as pertaining to the kingdom that are to come in the future. Interesting enough, when interpreting about the last kingdom ruling the earth, just before the establishment of God's kingdom on earth, he prophesied the following to the king. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. Just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. Interesting enough here is to note the verse 43, which says, "They will mingle with the seed of men." Who are they? Once again, these are the rebellious angels who will once again inhabit the earth and mingle with the seed of men. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. We do read in the scripture the laments about these angelic beings who would inhabit both in the heavenly and earthly realm. Isaiah chapter 14. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lower depths of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, all of them sleep in glory, everyone in his own house. But you are cast out of your grave like an abominable branch, like the garment of those who are slain, thrust through with a sword, who go down to the stones of the pit, like a corpse trodden underfoot. You will not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land and slain your people. The brood of evildoers shall never be named. prepare slaughter for his children because of the iniquity of their fathers, lest they rise up and possess the land and fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, says Yahweh of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant, and offspring and posterity, says Yahweh. Yahweh of hosts has sworn, saying, Surely as I have thought, so it shall come to pass, and as I have purposed, so it shall stand. Here we see God's judgment that is waiting to happen to the king of Babylon, who is referred as someone fallen from heaven, which obviously means he is an angelic being, who thought of exalting himself above the Most High God, yet he is referred here as a man. In Ezekiel chapter 28, we read, Moreover, the word of Yahweh came to Ezekiel, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says Yahweh God, You wear the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering, the sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with gold. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of the fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you. By the abundance of your trading you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore I cast you as profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings, that they might gaze at you. You defiled your sanctuaries by the multitude of your iniquities, by the iniquity of your trading. Therefore I brought fire from your midst. It devoured you, and I turned you to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all those who saw you. All who knew you among the people are astonished at you. You have become a horror and shall be no more forever. Again, this is another lamentation against the king of Tyre, who is referred here to be present in the Garden of Eden. Not only that, he was also once a guardian cherub, which indicates the king is not mere human being but an angelic being. In the book of Daniel, chapter 10, we read the angel Gabriel narrating to prophet Daniel about his encounter with a king of Persia. Then he said to me, Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision refers to many days yet to come. So here we find Angel Gabriel narrating his encounter with the king of Persia, who was preventing him from getting his message to Daniel the prophet. And Angel Gabriel was locked with the king of Persia for 21 days until another angelic being, Michael, came to his aid. So these happenings doesn't seem to happen in the earthly realm, but in the heavenly realm. And Gabriel the angel narrated further. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? and now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed, the prince of Greece will come, but I will tell you that is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds me against these except Michael your prince. And angel Gabriel also tells Daniel that during his return he has to encounter another prince who is the prince of Greece. So, what do these angelic beings have to do with Satan? The name Satan is translated from the Hebrew word shatan, meaning adversary. And in Job 1, we read the function of Satan. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them. And Yahweh said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered Yahweh and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then Yahweh said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil." So Satan answered Yahweh and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And Yahweh said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh. So we find here that Satan's role is to test upright people so as to bring a bad reputation before God, which God does permit within a limit, not only to reward the loyalty of his elect before the adversary, but also to justify his own position as to why they are his elect. Again, in Zechariah chapter 3, we read, "Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of Yahweh, and Satan standing at his right hand to oppose him. And Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire?" Again here we see the vision of Zechariah the prophet, where Satan stands beside the angel of Yahweh and opposes Yahweh from honoring Joshua the high priest. This happening is set in the heavenly realm. So now we can understand why Yahweh chose to destroy the entire human race except Noah and his family with a global flood. Genesis 7. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, on that day, all that fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. If you could recollect the creation account in part 1, we saw that when God created the land, it was a single large landmass. But when all the foundations of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were opened, the single large landmass was broken up, and the continental drift that contributes to the present geographical pattern took its effect. So on the very same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his son with them entered the ark, they and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark of Noah 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So those who that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and Yahweh shut him inside the ark. So Yahweh thus destroyed the earth with a global flood so as to erase the Nephilim hybrid race that were against his plan of restoring the dominion to man through a human offspring who will eventually crush the dominion of Satan. So after the flood receded, we read in Genesis 8, then Noah built an altar to Yahweh and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahweh smelled a soothing aroma. Then Yahweh said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake. Although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. So once again, here we see God accepting the blood sacrifice. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. Here, food is meant to be within the context of what God meant as clean foods fit for human consumption as outlined in Leviticus 11. Contrast this with his command during man's creation in Eden. We read, and God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So before the fall of man in Eden, all God purposed for man is to have only a vegetarian lifestyle. It's only after the fall consumption of living creatures were permitted. And God said, this is the sign of covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. Here the Hebrew word for rainbow is keshet, which also means a plain bow. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. So, till what we have covered so far, we saw the earth was judged with a flood, and God makes a covenant that he will not judge the earth again with a flood, and he gives a sign which is a rainbow or a bow. And the important thing to note here is that the bow faces the heaven and not the earth, which indicates a warning of the judgment impending on the heavenly host or the rebellious angels. Now, after this, we find the descendants of Noah through his sons Japheth, Shem, and Ham inhabited the entire earth. But men, given into rebellion once again through the influences of the heavenly principalities, started building a rebellious tower at Babel. In Genesis 11, we read, "Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. They then said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." But Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Yahweh said, Indeed, the people are one, and they will have one language. And this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because there Yahweh confused the language of all the earth, and from there Yahweh scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So we find here, up until the rebellion of building this tower at Shinar, all of mankind were speaking only one language, which scripturally speaking could be the Hebrew language, as no other language has significant meaning like the Hebrew names that carries the relevant message behind its name in the scripture. Also, this is against God's command to man to spread over all the earth. So God determined to confuse their language of men so that they may not understand each other and get scattered over the face of all the earth to fulfill his purpose. We read the same incident in Deuteronomy 32, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance. When he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. So it is very important to note that here God divided mankind through the difference in their languages and assigned them according to the number of the sons of God, who are angelic beings, whose primary duty we already saw is that to be ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation. Another important thing to note here is that the text says Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob, who is also called Israel. But at this point of time of division of mankind, we don't see Israel yet in the picture, which would take another few centuries. It is these people who will be one day the special inheritance of God, who will also receive the gift of deciphering the divine language Hebrew, which was lost in the confusion of languages during the episode of the Tower of Babel. Though God assigns mankind to his angelic beings, we will see how these angelic beings would fail in their duty and earn the rebuke of God. In Psalm 82, we read the following: God has taken his place in the divine council, which is the heavenly council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. These gods are the demigods or the angelic beings who are given in charge to judge mankind. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die, and fall like any prince. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. It is from this council we saw the angelic kings of Tyre, Persia, and Greece, etc. So finally, when it would be time to judge the whole earth, God will judge all these angelic hosts, which is indicated by the covenant sign of rainbow that faces the heaven. And Yahweh will arise to inherit the whole earth. So this is the picture to show how mankind, through the descendants of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were scattered initially in the earth to what we have become today. So this concludes part 2 of the Messiah series. In part 3, we will see the specific chosen seed line of Yahweh through which his promised offspring of the woman, which is obviously a human being, who will crush the dominion of Satan and restore the dominion back to man, would come. Shalom.